Hello and welcome to another Lamp Bible Study. My name is James, your host and Bible reader for Lamp Bible Study. So I ran into a huge technical issue where I'm having to redo this. So this is second take because I did the first take, was editing, trying to make sure that everything was going good, and somehow the file got corrupted while it was in the process and the audio left, and it was just a mess. And so I was like, well, let me go ahead and redo it. So here we are again. So we are going into First Kings, and from leaving from the book of Samuel. The reason why I'm going to look, because I was like, I've done this a couple of weeks ago, and I usually go back and make sure that everything's okay on the same day that I do the video recording. However, that day I was in a hurry, so it just, and of course, things happen. So, but thank you so much for joining me on another Lamp Bible Study. And I pray and hope that we continue to seek the Lord's wisdom through His holy word. And so with today, there's been a lot on my mind once again. So let's get started with, I'm going to do a quick pause. There we go. another technical difficulty. But I really enjoy Lamp Bible Study. I'm always excited. So congratulations, we made it to another Lamp Bible Study. So let's get started with today's lesson in First Kings. There's a lot. And so I know when we go into Kings and Chronicles, there's a lot in each chapter and they're lengthy. So let's get started into First Kings. And I'm currently reading from NIV Collegiate Bible. And I'll continue to until we finish this version of the Bible, and then I'll go into other versions of the Bible. So let's get started once again. Adonijah sets himself up as king. When King David was old and well advanced in years, he could not keep warm even when they put covers over him. So his servants said to him, "Let us look for a young virgin to attend the king and take care of him. She can lie beside him so that our lord the king may keep warm." Then they searched throughout Israel for a beautiful girl and found Abishag, a Shunammite, and brought her to the king. The girl was very beautiful. She took care of the king and waited on him, but the king had no intimate relations with her. Now Adonijah, whose mother was Haggith, put himself forward and said, "I will be king." So he got chariots and horses ready, with 50 men to run ahead of him. His father had never interfered with him by asking, "Why do you behave as you do?" He was also very handsome and was born next after Absalom. So a quick reference as to what's going on is that when we left 2 Samuel, David had just built the altar, built another altar to the Lord, and he had really got control of, started getting control of the Promised Land, and he was making sure that the Philistines and the rest of the people, surrounding kingdoms, basically, making sure that their enemies were routed. And so now we're moving on, and we're getting ready to move on to the next person in line, which is going to be one of David's children. And so there's quite a bit going on. And so it's giving us a backstory kind of as to what's going on and how each of the children, especially the sons, were ready to rule. They were ready to rule. In this case, remember Absalom. Absalom already tried to take over the kingdom, and now you have yet another son, Adonijah, who is wanting to be king. So let's continue to read and see what happens. Adonijah conferred with Joab, son of Zerah, and with Abiathar the priest, and they gave him their support. But Zadok the priest, Benaiah son of Jehoiada, Nathan the prophet, Shimei and Rei, and David's special guard did not join Adonijah. Adonijah then sacrificed sheep, cattle, and fattened calves at the stone of Zeholeth near En Rogel. He invited all his brothers, the king's sons, and all the men of Judah who were royal officials, but he did not invite Nathan the prophet, or Benaiah, or the special guard, or his brother Solomon. Then Nathan asked Bathsheba, Solomon's mother, "Have you not heard that Adonijah, the son of Haggith, has become king without our Lord David's knowing it? Now then, let me advise you how you can save your own life and the life of your son Solomon. Go in to King David and say to him, 'My lord, the king, did you not swear to me, your servant, surely Solomon, your son, shall be king after me, and he will sit on my throne? Why then has Adonijah become king? While you are still there talking to the king, I will come in and confirm what you have said.' So Bathsheba went to see the aged king in his room when Abishag the Shunammite was attending him. Bathsheba bowed low and knelt before the king. 'What is it you want?' the king asked. She said to him, 'My lord, you yourself swore to me, your servant, by the Lord your God, Solomon your son shall be king after me, and he will sit on my throne. But now Adonijah has become king, and you, my lord the king, do not know about it. He has sacrificed great numbers of cattle, fattened calves, and sheep, and has invited all the king's sons, Abiathar the priest, and Joab the commander of the army, but he has not invited Solomon your servant. My lord the king, the eyes of all Israel are on you, to learn from you who will sit on the throne of my lord the king after him. Otherwise, as soon as my lord and the king is laid to rest with his fathers, I and my son Solomon will be treated as criminals.'" So, as you can see, Adonijah, there was, and with David's children, there were power struggles already. And it reminds me of like different TV series and such, but there's always power struggles, including like bringing past to present. There's power struggles today, including within families and within companies and such, when it comes to moving to the next generation, or someone who had control and is passing the control over to someone else. There's always power struggles. And in this case, it was so much so that Adonijah didn't like Solomon, possibly because of jealousy, possibly because he knew that David eventually wanted to give him the kingdom. And so, to the point where Adonijah, when he would become king, that would put Solomon and his mother at risk, their lives at risk. And so, thinking about that, and just how people are focused on power and authority over the relationship with the Lord. And so Adonijah was really focused on obtaining the throne, more so than really following what the Lord had in store for him. So, reading over this first part, what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind when we read over this? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. While she was still speaking with the king, Nathan the prophet arrived, and they told the king, "Nathan the prophet is here." So he went before the king and bowed with his face to the ground. Nathan said, "Have you, my lord the king, declared that Adonijah shall be king after you, and that he will sit on your throne? Today he has gone down and sacrificed great numbers of cattle, fattened calves, and sheep. He has invited all the king's sons, the commanders of the army, and Abiathar the priest. Right now, they are eating and drinking with him and saying, 'Long live King Adonijah, but me, your servant, and Zadok the priest, and Benaiah son of Jehoiada, and your servant Solomon, he did not invite. Is this something my lord the king has done without letting his servants know who would sit on the throne of my lord the king after him?'" And so, as we can see, there's issue, because these people knew already that David had said that Solomon was going to be his heir. Now, remember, David, this is interesting, right? Because David, in order to get with and marry Bathsheba, he murdered somebody. He had her original husband, her first husband, murdered. And so he humbled himself and asked for forgiveness. But Nathan the prophet had told him, there was going to be consequence. And so there has been consequence in this case. And so also, though, we can see that even with that sin that he's done, the Lord can still utilize people. The Lord can still turn bad situations into good. And that's something that we have to think about in our lives too, bringing past to present, is that sometimes when we do actions that we commit sin, or we do something that's wrong, which is sin, there are consequences. But there can also be when we humble ourselves and ask for forgiveness, there can also be, the Lord can turn things around and not allow for our own created disaster to happen. Or a disaster may happen, but there's always light at the end of the tunnel, as the saying goes. There's always hope, and that is hope in the Lord. So we are to draw near to Him, closer to Him, so that way we are comforted, and that we do know that we can rely upon our Lord. So and be humble and thank Jesus for everything that He has in His grace, right? And so, what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind over this? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. David makes Solomon king. Then King David said, "Call in Bathsheba." So she came into the king's presence and stood before him. So basically, she was before him before, but when Nathan came in, she probably exited the room. So he's like, recall her back in. The king then took an oath. "As surely as the Lord lives, who has delivered me out of every trouble, I will surely carry out today what I swore to you by the Lord, the God of Israel. Solomon, your son, shall be king after me, and he will sit on my throne in my place." Then Bathsheba bowed low with her face to the ground, and kneeling before the king said, "May my lord King David live forever." King David said, "Call in Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah son of Jehoiada." When they came before the king, he said to them, "Take your Lord's servants with you, and set Solomon my son on my own mule, and take him down to Gihon. There have Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet anoint him king over Israel. Blow the trumpet and shout, 'Long live King Solomon.' Then you are to go up with him, and he is to come and sit on my throne and reign in my place. I have appointed him ruler over Israel and Judah." And so right now, basically, David's trying to go ahead and move the reign, leadership over to his son Solomon, and which there's a reason, right? There's a reason for everything, and we're going to learn that here in just in a few moments. I believe during this Bible study too. Let's continue to read. Benaiah son of Jehoiada answered the king, "Amen. May the Lord, the God of my lord the king, so declare it. As the Lord was with my lord the king, so may he be with Solomon, to make his throne even greater than the throne of my lord King David." So Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, Benaiah son of Jehoiada, the Kerethites and the Pelethites went down and put Solomon on King David's mule and escorted him to Gihon. Zadok the priest took the horn of oil from the sacred tent and anointed Solomon. Then they sounded the trumpet, and all the people shouted, "Long live King Solomon." And all the people went up after him, playing flutes and rejoicing greatly, so that the ground shook with sound. Adonijah and all the guests who were with him heard it as they were finishing their feast. On hearing the sound of the trumpet, Joab asked, "What's the meaning of all the noise in the city?" Even as he was speaking, Jonathan, son of Abiathar, the priest, arrived. Adonijah said, "Come in. A worthy man like you must be bringing good news." Not at all, Jonathan answered. Our Lord King David has made Solomon king. The king has sent with him Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, Benaiah son of Jehoiada, the Kerethites, and the Pelethites, and they have put him on the king's mule. And Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet have anointed him king of Gihon, king at Gihon. From there they have gone up cheering, and the city resounds with it. That's the noise you hear. Moreover, Solomon has taken a seat on the royal throne. Also, the royal officials have come to congratulate our Lord King David, saying, May your God make Solomon's name more famous than yours, and his throne greater than yours. And the king bowed in worship on his bed and said, Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, who has allowed my eyes to see a successor on my throne today. So remember, Adonijah just had a feast. He had already declared himself king. So yeah, spoke too soon, right? Wanted to control things, wanted to be in control of things, wanted to do things his way, and jumped to conclusions too soon. So do we do that? Bringing past to present. Do we sometimes jump to conclusions? Do we do things too soon? Do we always do things in our own time? Think about that. Think about those things. Do we do things when we want to do them, or do we pray to the Lord and give it to the Lord and allow for things to happen in the Lord's time? I know that whenever I give things to the Lord, it happens in perfect timing. It doesn't happen in my timing. It happens in perfect timing. It comes when it's supposed to happen. Blessings happen when they're supposed to happen. Things happen when they're supposed to happen. And so when we worry and when we make concern, we can always bring that to the Lord. But we have to remember to bring those to the Lord and try not to control things, because when we try to take action, bad things can happen, such as in this case. Adonijah jumped to conclusions, and now he's looking foolish, right? And we don't want to look foolish either. So what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind over this? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. At this, all Adonijah's guests rose in alarm and dispersed. Of course they did. They were like, ooh, ooh. But Adonijah, in fear of Solomon, went and took hold of the horns of the altar. Then Solomon was told, Adonijah is afraid of King Solomon and is clinging to the horns of the altar. He says, Let King Solomon swear to me today that he will not put his servant to death with the sword. So as you can see, Adonijah was going to put Solomon and his mother to the sword, and now he's fearing to death because not only did he not invite him, but now Solomon was made king, and so he thinks that there's going to be immediate backlash, and that happens, when, and we're going to see what Solomon does here at first, because it's an example. When we get mistreated and such, when you or I get mistreated and such, we're not to seek revenge. The revenge is the Lord's. And the Lord, and that comes in perfect timing as well, which we'll see here in shortly. So bringing past to present, again, not taking things into account for our own actions, allowing it in God's time, as well as not seeking revenge for things that happen to us. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind when we read this? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Solomon replied, If he shows himself to be a worthy man, not a hair of his head will fall to the ground. But if evil is found in him, he will die. Then King Solomon sent men, and they brought him down from the altar. And Adonijah came and bowed down to King Solomon. And Solomon said, Go to your home. So another thing, there's a lot of Old Testament names and such. If you know the correct pronunciation, say them along with us. If you know how to type them out, please do so in the comments. I always read the comments and I'll take note, and thank you. So as we can see, Solomon wasn't seeking vengeance. He wasn't immediately. Um, he may have been upset with his brother because there may have been conflict, power struggle and such, but he didn't take it to heart. He didn't take it to as, well, yeah, I'm going to get revenge on you because you we know that if you were king, I would be dead right now. He went ahead and gave it to the Lord. Basically, he was like, just go to your home. Just you know, con- we're just gonna let whatever the situation go and give it to God, right? And bringing past to present. That's what, and a good example for us, letting things go and giving it to the Lord to deal with, because the outcomes, man, the outcomes could be completely different. Something similar happened to myself recently where things happened and they were not so well, and I gave it to the Lord, and it turned out to be okay. Everything turned out to be fine, and so that's, and even though there were things on my mind, even though there was all kinds of situations playing out, I know that was things in my mind as well as the devil, putting things in my mind, things, what if scenarios, I kept thinking about it, and told myself I need to turn this over to the Lord. I need to turn this over to the Lord and let Him deal with it. And every so often I would be just not paying attention and start thinking about it again. And every single time I would start getting into those what if scenarios. And every single time I would be like, I need to stop thinking about this and give it to the Lord. And so being able to do that and being able to fully do that and give it to the Lord, I believe that that helped because I didn't have to take action. There was nothing that I needed to do or say. And the situation was resolved, and there was no issue. And so, in fact, everything was just fine, and if not better. So that's things that we can learn from. We can take examples from what we read, and we can also apply those things to our lives here. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind over this? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. David's charge to Solomon. When the time drew near for David to die, he gave a charge to Solomon his son. I'm about to go the way of all the earth, he said. So be strong, show yourself a man, and observe what the Lord your God requires. Walk in his ways and keep his decrees and commands, his laws and requirements, as written in the law of Moses, so that you may prosper in all you do and wherever you go, and that the Lord may keep his promise to me. If your descendants watch how they live, and if they walk faithfully before me with all their heart and soul, you will never fail to have a man on the throne of Israel. Now, you yourself know that Joab, son of Zeruiah, did to me what he did to the two commanders of Israel's army, Abner, son of Ner, and Amasa, son of Jether. He killed them, shedding their blood in peacetime as if in battle, and with that blood stained the belt around his waist and the sandals on his feet. Deal with him according to your wisdom, but do not let his gray head go down to the grave in peace. But show kindness to the sons of Barzillai of Gilead, and let them be among those who eat at your table. They stood by me when I fled from your brother Absalom. And remember, you have with you Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjamite, from Behurim, who called down bitter curses on me that day I went to Mahanaim. When he came down to meet me at the Jordan, I swore to him by the Lord, I will not put you to death by the sword. But now do not consider him innocent. You are a man of wisdom. You will know what to do to him. Bring his gray head down to the grave in blood. Oof. He was basically saying, again, there's another person that mistreated David. And David at the time was feeling low because he was feeling like he did deserve some consequences. He had someone murdered. He wasn't making. There was a few times where he didn't make a good decision. In his life, because he wasn't perfect, but he was really close. He was really good. Like we'll see in Psalms, and like very he was very good in worshiping the Lord, and things he provides many of example. So but at the time he was also providing an example of what it means to take account for things, to accept, our failures, and accept when we do things wrong, take accountability. And that's what David shows us. David shows that we can take accountability and still humble ourselves and be blessed by the Lord and ask for forgiveness, and because the Lord is abounding in grace and mercy for us, and he loves us that much. And so he's just reminding his son that, yeah, this person didn't do well by me, and I never did anything to him, but more than likely Shimei is still not a good person. And so be aware of this person. And he's telling them, you may have to take action against this person, because they're really not a good person. So, and we'll see why. We'll see what happens here. So let's continue to read. Then David rested with his fathers and was buried in the city of David. He had reigned 40 years over Israel, 7 years in Hebron, and 33 in Jerusalem. So Solomon sat on the throne of his father, and his rule was firmly established. So David has now passed, and we're going to move on now. The Bible's moving us on to a new ruler, new leader for Israel, and that's his son Solomon. And we're going to get introduced to Solomon and how he is. So David, and from now on, kings are going to be compared to David, because David was a just ruler. He loved the Lord. He loved the Lord, and he followed the commands of the Lord as much as possible. He had some slip-ups, of course, because we're all human and we've fall to temptation. However, when he was have his close walk with the Lord, he was close with the Lord. And that's things that we can take into account for our own lives, bringing past to present. And so I always urge people who, if you don't know the Lord, pray, reach out to him. We have a living God. Talk to Jesus. He's there. You'll be surprised, right? You'll get an answer. You may get an answer. So think about it. And for those of us that do have a walk with the Lord, whenever there is problems, whenever there's trouble, we are to grow closer to the Lord. Whenever there's, good times too, we're to draw closer to the Lord, right? And thank him and bless him back for our blessings that he gives us in abundance. So bringing over this, what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Solomon's throne established. Now Adonijah, son of Haggith, went to Bathsheba, Solomon's mother. Bathsheba asked him, "Do you come peacefully?" Of course she's asking him like that, because, of course, Adonijah at one time wanted to kill her. Kill her and her son. So she's asking him, "Do you come peacefully?" He answered, "Yes, peacefully." Then he added, "I have something to say to you." "You may say it," she replied. "As you know," he said, "the kingdom was mine. All Israel looked to me as their king, but things changed, and the kingdom has gone to my brother, for it has come to him from the Lord. Now I have one request to make of you. Do not refuse me." So that's kind of his pride and arrogance showing, right? He's like, this was mine, but the Lord has given it to my brother. Yeah. So showing some things about keeping the law and the commands of how, we're to love our brother, love each other, showing how there's already discourse. Remember, David had a lot of children too. So it says a lot, when it comes to discourse in his family, because he had basically lots of children and different wives. It can happen when it comes to the law and the commands. But in this case, David was still blessed with all these children. So then you have to think about each person's character, right? The children's character in this case, and how they thought about the laws and the commands and the rules and such. And what examples did they have, or what did they look to as their source? And so we can start to see slip-ups in the family here, bringing past to present. Do we have slip-ups ourselves? Do we have times where within the family, within the community, within work group and such, do we have slip-ups where somebody's not going in the same direction, or is going in their own direction, right? There's all kinds of things to think about here and apply it to. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. You may make it, she said. So he continued, please ask King Solomon. He will not refuse you to give me Abishag the Shunammite as my wife. Uh-oh. Let's continue reading. Very well, Bathsheba replied. I will speak to the king for you. When Bathsheba went to King Solomon to speak to him for Adonijah, the king stood up to meet her, bowed down to her, and sat down on his throne. He had a throne brought for the king's mother, and she sat down at his right hand. I have one small request to make of you, she said. Do not refuse me. The king replied, make it. My mother, I will not refuse you. So she said, let Abishag the Shunammite be given in marriage to your brother Adonijah. King Solomon answered his mother, why do you request Abishag the Shunammite for Adonijah? You might as well request the kingdom for him. After all, he is my older brother, yes, for him and for Abiathar the priest and Joab son of Zeruiah. So you're like, okay, so why did... It sounds like Solomon is like taking this to the 10th degree, like he's enraged. Excuse me, he is, because Haggith the Shunammite was a kind, beautiful person that was taking care of David in his more mature years, right before his death. And so she had gained huge respect through the whole kingdom. And so once again, during those time periods, people with a lot of respect had a lot of power, had a lot of say. And so his authority was coming into question again. His kingship was coming into question by his brother Abijah making this request. Abijah was going to cause discourse because in the kingdom, because if he were to marry the Shunammite. And so that's what we have to think about. We have to think about how major, it was during that time, of what kind of request that was. It was basically almost saying Adonijah wants to rule as well. And so Solomon was like, whoa, 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 whoa. There's only one ruler. I'm pretty sure Solomon wouldn't have mind, every now and then asking people, it's, even family members, advice and such, if needed, or have, but in this case, it was a challenge, basically. So Solomon very upset. Let's see what happens. Let's continue to read. Then King Solomon swore by the Lord, may God deal with me, be it ever so severely, if Adonijah does not pay with his life for this request. And now, as surely as the Lord lives, he who has established me securely on the throne of my father David and has founded a dynasty for me as he promised, Adonijah shall be put to death today. So King Solomon gave orders to Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, and he struck down Adonijah, and he died. So there you go. Solomon knew that Adonijah was going to keep and be perpetual and sneaky and wanted to take control out of Solomon's hands of the kingdom. So, and he had mentioned, he had already told him, if your intentions are good, everything's cool. But if your intentions are evil, if it's not of the Lord and it's evil, then he's then, Adonijah is declaring himself his fate, and that's what just happened. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind over this? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. To Abiathar the priest, the king said, "Go back to your fields in Anathoth. You deserve to die, but I will not put you to death now, because you carried the ark of the sovereign Lord before my father David and shared all my father's hardships." So Solomon removed Abiathar from the priesthood of the Lord, fulfilling the word of the Lord had spoken at Shiloh about the house of Eli. Remember, Eli had it was told that his family was no longer being priesthood, and so now it has happened. Let's continue to read. When the news reached Joab, who had conspired with Adonijah, though not with Absalom, he fled to the tent of the Lord and took hold of the horns of the altar. King Solomon was told that Joab had fled to the tent of the Lord and was beside the altar. Then Solomon ordered Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, "Go strike him down." So Benaiah entered the tent of the Lord and said to Joab, "The king says, 'Come out.'" But he answered, "No, I will die here." Benaiah reported to the king, "This is how Joab answered me." Then the king commanded Benaiah, "Do as he says, strike him down and bury him, and so clear me and my father's house of the guilt of the innocent blood that Joab shed. The Lord will repay him for the blood he shed, because without the knowledge of my father David, he attacked 2 men and killed them with the sword. Both of them, Abner, son of Ner, commander of Israel's army, and Amasa, son of Jether, commander of Judah's army, were better men and more upright than he. May the guilt of their blood rest on the head of Joab and his descendants forever, but on David and his descendants, his house and his throne, may there be the Lord's peace forever." So Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, went up and struck down Joab and killed him. And he was buried on his own land in the desert. The king put Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, over the army in Joab's position and replaced Abiathar with Zodek the priest. So it's like, really, Solomon's kind of cleaning up. He's kind of cleaning up the issues in the family, right? Lots going on here, lots to talk about. Let's continue to read. Then the king sent for Shimei and said to him, remember the person, the man that was doing curses at his father. "Build yourself a house in Jerusalem and live there, but do not go anywhere else. The day you leave and cross the Kidron Valley, you can be sure you will die. Your blood will be on your own head." Shimei answered the king, "What you say is good. Your servant will do as my lord the king has said." And Shimei stayed in Jerusalem for a long time. But 3 years later, 2 of Shimei's slaves ran off to Achish, son of Maacah, king of Gath, and Shimei was told, "Your slaves are in Gath." At this, he saddled his donkey and went to Achish at Gath in search of his slaves. So Shimei went away and brought the slaves back from Gath. So remember, he was told not to leave Jerusalem. Let's see what happens. When Solomon was told that Shimei had gone from Jerusalem to Gath and had returned, the king summoned Shimei and said to him, "Did I not make you swear by the Lord and warn you on the day you leave to go anywhere else, you can be sure you will die? At that time you said to me, 'What you say is good. I will obey.' Why then did you not keep your oath to the Lord and obey the command I gave you?" Because remember, Shimei is not a good person. He does whatever he wants to do. As we see. So let's see what happens. The king also said to Shimei, "You know in your heart all the wrong you did to my father, David. Now the Lord will repay you for your wrongdoing. But King Solomon will be blessed, and David's throne will remain secure before the Lord forever." Then the king gave the order to Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, and he went out and struck Shimei down and killed him. The kingdom was now firmly established in Solomon's hands. Like we just mentioned, Solomon was cleaning up the past issues and establishing the kingdom, correct, putting it in line correctly. And so thus all those prophecies and all those things were coming true. And now Shimei, who agreed to, that he was going to be alive and stay in Jerusalem, but then he does what he wants to do, right? And left Jerusalem. It was told to Solomon, and Solomon was like, "Look, you swore to God, myself, but of course you just do what you want to do." your oaths mean nothing. And Shimei just revealed also, it was in a way like revealing that what he did to his father David was wrong too, and that it wasn't in line what may have not been in line with what was supposed to happen. So Shimei's now passed. And what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind over this? How does it make you feel and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Solomon asked for wisdom. Very important, so take note of this part. Solomon made an alliance with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and married his daughter. He brought her to the city of David until he finished building his palace and the temple of the Lord and the wall around Jerusalem. The people, however, were still sacrificing at the high places because a temple had not yet been built for the name of the Lord. Solomon showed his love for the Lord by walking according to the statute of his father David, except that he offered sacrifices and burnt incense on the high places. The king went to Gibeon to offer sacrifices, for that was the most important high place, and Solomon offered 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon during the night in a dream, and God asked, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." Solomon answered, and take note of this is really good. "You have shown great kindness." So think about, hold on, before I think about this, God comes to you and asks you whatever you want. You can ask me whatever you want. Think about that. Bringing past to present. Think about that in your life. Let's continue to read. Solomon answered, "You have shown great kindness to your servant, my father David, because he was faithful to you and righteous and upright in heart. You have continued this great kindness to him and have given him a son to sit on his throne this very day. Now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David. But I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people too numerous to count or number. So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. For who is able to govern this great people of yours?" Literally, Solomon asked for wisdom from the Lord. He could have asked for anything, and he asked for wisdom to lead the people to be just and good and be able to actually lead the Lord's people. He could have asked for anything. And so that just shows just how Solomon's character and where his heart lied. His heart lied with wanting to give back to the Lord and thanking the Lord and wanting to know how. And that's another thing. We think that we know how all the time, right? We know what to do all the time. We can ask, Lord, how do we better please you? How do we better worship you? How do we better communicate with you? How do we better walk with you? And that is something that we can take from past to present and really look and take effect with our own lives, right? And so take note of this. And Solomon asked for wisdom, and let's see what happens. But what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. The Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for this. So God said to him, "Since you have asked for this, and not for a long life or wealth for yourself, nor have asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment in administering justice, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. Moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for, both riches and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among kings. And if you walk in my ways and obey my statutes and commands, as David your father did, I will give you a long life." Then Solomon awoke, and he realized it had been a dream. He returned to Jerusalem, stood before the ark of the Lord's covenant, and sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. Then he gave a feast for all his court. So the Lord not only gave him what he asked for, which was wisdom, but he also gave him a long life, riches, and honor. He gave Solomon what he didn't ask for, the other things that he didn't ask for, because what Solomon did pleased the Lord. And so the Lord's always waiting for us to say, for us to ask, and for us to give thanks back to him. It's something that he, that's he gave us the free will to do that, and he wants to hear it from us. He wants to hear it from you. He wants to hear it from me. A thank you, or an asking him for guidance, asking him for help. That's what he wants. He wants us to have a relationship with him. And he also wants us to listen too. And so that's also key, is listening to what the Lord has to say. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. A wise ruling. Now, 2 prostitutes came to the king and stood before him. One of them said, "My lord, this woman and I live in the same house. I had a baby while she was there with me. The 3rd day after my child was born, this woman also had a baby. We were alone. There was no one in the house but the 2 of us. During the night, this woman's son died because she lay on him. So she got up in the middle of the night and took my son from my side while I, your servant, was asleep. She put him by her breast and put her dead son by my breast. The next morning I got up to nurse my son, and he was dead. But when I looked at him closely in the morning light, I saw that it wasn't the son I had born." The other woman said, "No, the living one is my son, the dead one is yours." But the first one insisted, "No, the dead one is yours, the living one is mine." And so they argued before the king. The king said, "This one says, 'My son is alive and your son is dead,' while that one says, 'No, your son is dead and mine is alive.'" Then the king said, "Bring me a sword." So they brought a sword for the king. He then gave an order: "Cut the living child in 2 and give half the one and half to the other." Let's see what happens. The woman whose son was alive was filled with compassion for her son and said to the king, "Please, my lord, give her the living baby. Don't kill him." But the other said, Neither I nor you shall have him. Cut him in 2." Then the king gave his ruling: "Give the living baby to the first woman. Do not kill him. She is his mother." When all Israel heard the verdict the king had given, they held the king in awe, because they saw that he had wisdom from God to administer justice. So now everybody was starting to take notice, like, whoa, this person has wisdom from the Lord, has wisdom from beyond knowledge. So, and that can happen. Bringing past to present. When we give thanks to the Lord can give us knowledge beyond our imagination, give us wisdom and answers beyond what anybody could think of. And so there's a lot here. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind when we read over this? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Solomon's officials and governors. So King Solomon ruled over all Israel, and these were his chief officials: Azariah, son of Zodok the priest, Elahoreph and Ijah, sons of Shisha, secretaries; Jehoshaphat, son of Ahilud, recorder; Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, commander-in-chief; Zodok and Abiathar, priest; Azariah, son of Nathan, in charge of the district officers; Zebed, son of Nathan, a priest and personal advisor to the king; Ahishar, in charge of the palace; Adoniram, son of Abda, in charge of forced labor. Solomon also had 12 district governors over all Israel, who supplied provisions for the king and the royal household. Each one had to provide supplies for 1 month in the year. These are their names: Ben-Hur in the hill country of Ephraim, Ben-Dekkar and Mechaz, Shalbim, Beth-Shemesh and Elon Bethanan, Ben-Hesed in Araboth, Sukkah in all the land of Hepher were his. Ben-Adab in Nephoth Dor, he was married to Tephath, daughter of Solomon. Benah, son of Ahilud in Tanakh and Megiddo, and all of Beth-Shan next to Zarathan below Jezreel, from Beth-Shan to Abel Meholah across the Jokmeam. Ben-Geber and Ramoth Gilead, the settlements of Jar, son of Manasseh and Gilead were his, as well as the district of Argob and Benjamin and Bashan and its 60 large walled cities with bronze gate bars. Ahinadab, son of Ido, and Mahanaim, Ahimaaz in Naphtali. He had married Basemath, daughter of Solomon. Bana, son of Hoshai, in Asher and in Aloth. Jehoshaphat, son of Purah, and Issachar. Shimei, son of Elaine, and Benjamin. Gibber, son of Uri, Gilead, the country of Sihon, king of the Amorites, and the country of Og, king of Bashan. He was the only governor over the district. So it's giving us a background into all of Solomon's court and his officials and such. So it's setting up how his kingdom was run and ruled. So reading over these, what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Solomon's daily provisions. The people of Judah and Israel were as numerous as the sand of the seashore. They ate, they drank, and they were happy. And Solomon ruled over all the kingdoms from the river to the land of the Philistines as far as the border of Egypt. These countries brought tribute and were Solomon's subjects all his life. Solomon's daily provisions were 30 cores of fine flour and 60 cores of meal, 10 head of stall-fed cattle, 20 of pasture-fed cattle, and 100 sheep and goats, as well as deer, gazelles, roebucks, and choice fowl. For he ruled over all the kingdoms west of the river, from Tipsah to Gaza, and had peace on all sides. During Solomon's lifetime, Judah and Israel, from Dan to Beersheba, lived in safety, each man under his own vine and fig tree. Solomon had 4,000 stalls for chariot horses and 12,000 horses. The district officers, each in his month, supplied provisions for King Solomon and all who came to the king's table. They saw to it that nothing was lacking. They also brought to the proper place their quotas of barley and straw for the chariot horses and the other horses. So, as we can see, Israel's gaining tons of riches and things, because Solomon's kingdom is going to be the greatest kingdom on the earth during this time. And so, what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind over all of this? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? And just a quick thought about it, it's, in our lives, when we draw closer to the Lord and such, great things can happen. Great things can happen, and we can be abundant in blessings, right? So let's continue to read. Solomon's wisdom. God gave Solomon wisdom and very great insight, and a breadth of understanding as measureless as the sand on the seashore. Solomon's wisdom was greater than the wisdom of all the men of the East, and greater than all the wisdom of Egypt. He was wiser than any other man, including Ethan the Israelite, wiser than Heman, Calcol, and Darda, the sons of Mahol. And his fame spread to all the surrounding nations. He spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs numbered 1,005. He described plant life, from the cedar of Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of the walls. He also taught about animals and birds, reptiles and fish. Men of all nations came to listen to Solomon's wisdom, sent by all the kings of the world who had heard of his wisdom. So, and we'll learn more about Solomon's wisdom throughout here, as well as Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. He wrote a lot for us, and we'll get more familiar with just how wise he was in his wisdom. So reading over this little portion about the description about how wise Solomon was and things to look forward, what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? I think we're going to go over just a tad today. Let's continue to read. Preparations for building the temple. When Hiram, king of Tyre, heard that Solomon had been anointed king to succeed his father David, he sent his envoys to Solomon because he had always been on friendly terms with David. Solomon sent back this message to Hiram. You know that because of the wars waged against my father David from all sides, he cannot build a temple for the name of the Lord his God until the Lord put his enemies under his feet. But now the Lord my God has given me rest on every side, and there is no adversary or disaster. I intend therefore to build a temple for the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord told my father David when he said, "Your son, whom I will put on the throne in your place, will build the temple for my name." So give orders that cedars of Lebanon be cut for me. My men will work with yours, and I will pay you for your men whatever wages you set. You know that we have no one so skilled in felling timber as the Sidonians. When Hiram heard Solomon's message, he was greatly pleased and said, "Praise be to the Lord today, for he has given David a wise son to rule over his great nation." So, when following in the steps of the Lord, things happen, even with areas and people that don't follow the Lord, and they'll recognize and also praise the Lord, right? And that's what's happening here. Let's continue to read. So Hiram sent word to Solomon, "I have received the message you sent me and will do all you want in providing the cedar and pine logs. My men will haul them down from Lebanon to the sea, and I will float them in rafts by sea to the place you specify. There I will separate them, and you can take them away, and you are to grant my wish by providing food for my royal household." In this way, Hiram kept Solomon supplied with all the cedar and pine logs he wanted, and Solomon gave Hiram 20,000 cores of wheat as food for his household, in addition to 20,000 baths of pressed olive oil. Solomon continued to do this for Hiram year after year. The Lord gave Solomon wisdom, just as he had promised him. There were peaceful relations between Hiram and Solomon, and the two of them made a treaty. So here's Hiram, king of the Sidonians, and he's noticed that Israel is being blessed, and he is going to be blessed with right along with them, right? It says a lot. It says a lot when it comes to following the Lord, and it says that over and over again. When we follow close to the Lord, and we follow in the Lord's footsteps, and we have a relationship with the Lord, then we are blessed, and then people can be blessed around us, and they'll want to know why. Why are you so happy? Why are you so full of joy? Why I look upon you, feel like, and it looks like you know the answer. Well, we can tell them. We can tell them that we have a living Lord and Savior. We have Jesus that we believe in, and so there's a lot here to take from, even when it comes to past to present, from past to present, and we can look at just how impactful Solomon in his rulership started to be, and how he his tact in approaching others, asking for help and assistance, as well as asking for wisdom from the Lord. And so now he's able to, because of that, he's been blessed, and he's able to start getting things done. And the reason for this, that he's asking Hiram, is because he wants to build the temple. And we'll get to that here in the next Bible study. So reading over this, what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. King Solomon conscripted laborers from all Israel, 30,000 men. He sent them off to Lebanon in shifts of 10,000 a month, so that they spent 1 month in Lebanon and 2 months at home. Adoniram was in charge of the forced labor. Solomon had 70,000 carriers and 80,000 stone cutters in the hills, as well as 3,300 foremen who supervised the project and directed the workmen. At the king's command, they removed from the quarry large blocks of quality stone to provide a foundation of dressed stone for the temple. The craftsmen of Solomon and Hiram and the men of Gibal cut and prepared the timber and stone for the building of the temple. So now the Lord's going to have a place. Remember, because David wanted to build a temple, but prophet came and said, "You're not going to be the one to build a temple, but one of your sons will." So the Lord told that to David. And so David's son, now Solomon, is ruling, and Solomon is getting to build the temple. And so now there will no longer be a tent tabernacle where the ark will be, but there will be a permanent location for the Ark of the Covenant, and for the Lord to be, and for the present, with the presence of Israel, because he during this time he's their God, and that's and so and he's going to be with them as long as they keep faithful and their command and follow the commands and laws that the Lord provided them, and then that they would be continually blessed. And while they were blessed, they would be so blessed that they would overflow with blessings and be able to bless other nations and other people around them. And so that's starting to happen. And Solomon's, besides Solomon's wisdom, his riches are starting to show. He's starting to acquire things and obtain things, and people are bringing him tribute and such. So there's a lot going on here. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's do a quick review. So we started in a brand new book, which is First Kings today, and we already went from David now to Solomon, so we've covered quite a bit. But we first started with Adonijah sets himself up as king. So Adonijah, another one of David's sons, besides Absalom, had tried to set himself up as king, tried to jump to conclusion, but that wasn't the case. And so David makes Solomon king. And we learned that even though Solomon came from Bathsheba and David, that whole issue with David and Bathsheba, there was still going to be a blessing out of it. And this whole thing that we know that our Lord and Savior Jesus comes from this line. So, and if you don't know, we'll know. We'll know as we continue our Bible study read. David's charge to Solomon. David said, "Hey, there's some things that I didn't tie up, but it's my time, so leaving them to you. Leaving them to you." And so Solomon took him on. Solomon's throne was established. We learned that he wasn't going to do anything to Adonijah. He told Adonijah, if your intentions are good, you'll be fine. If your intentions are of evil and not walking with the Lord, you'll be dead. And Adonijah showed his true colors, and he ended up dead. And then we also got with Shimei, who and several other people, Joab and Shimei, who had not done right in their life and not done right by the Lord, and they ended up dying because of it. And so then we get to one of the most important parts for Solomon is that God came and asked him, "Okay, ask for me whatever you want." And Solomon did the correct thing. He didn't just want to look at himself. He didn't look at himself. He wasn't selfish, didn't have any selfish intentions or pride or arrogance or any of that. He said, "Lord, give me wisdom so I can lead your people. Show me what to do to lead your people." And the Lord was so pleased, because that's what he wants. He wants to hear it from us. He wants to hear our humbling. He wants to hear our requests from us. And so that's something that we can take into account. Another thing that we can take into account. So the Lord was so pleased with Solomon that he gave him the wisdom, as well as things that, people think about all the time: wealth, health, long life, and basically safety. Nor have asked for the death of his enemies, that he would have lifelong riches and knowledge and a long life. And the Lord gave him all of that because he was pleased, because he just wants to have a relationship. He's alive. We have a living God, and he wants to have a relationship with us. We also got to see just how wise Solomon is with his ruling with the two women and their child and the child. And we see that Solomon, even though it looked like, whoa, what's going on, because he brought a sword into it, but then it was beyond people's wisdom and knowledge and understanding. And so when he noticed the reaction, that is how he made his judgment, because that was provided by the Lord. Solomon's officials and governors we went over, and how he was setting up his kingdom, setting up the kingdom in order. Solomon's daily provisions, how he had lots of tributes and such coming in to help with the kingdom at a whole. Solomon's wisdom, again, when it came to how he was so wise that even the wise people of the earth paled in comparison. Then he starts in preparation for building the Lord's temple, just as was prophesied. And so that's where we're going to leave off today. And what kind of, over everything that we read, what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Thank you once again for joining me in another Lamp Bible study. This is take 2. And hopefully this one goes good. Hopefully this is recorded and doesn't have any sound or video issues. But I thank you very much. I hope and pray that we continue to seek the Lord's wisdom together, reading his holy word. Please continue to pray for me. I will always continue to pray for you. Lamp Bible studies come out every Tuesdays and Thursdays, and on the YouTube channel, as well as highlights, as well as the flashlights as well. So if you have any questions, comments, please sure to leave comment or questions in the comment section. There's also a Instagram page, or there's the email as well. If you have any questions, concerns, or if you want to do more with Lamp Bible Study, let me know. And so with that, wherever you are, have a blessed day, blessed morning, blessed day, blessed afternoon, blessed evening, a blessed night. God bless.